The shuttle struck Kharad's stair hard enough to rattle Turin Vol's teeth. Gray dust slipped from the basalt rail and vanished into the blue-black air below. Turin steadied one hand on the arrival pillar and looked toward the landing shelf. The human craft was already shutting down. White hull, blunt nose, 2 engines, no weapon housings large enough to worry a customs officer. Exactly what the recognition office had expected. A shuttle. Above the mountain, 3 guide stars formed the narrow triangle Turin had known since childhood. He checked them without thinking. The habit came from his father, who had taught him to judge weather by the distortion around the eastern point. Something about the triangle looked wrong. Only slightly. The upper star seemed displaced by the width of a fingernail. Turin blinked. It returned to where memory said it belonged. Atmospheric shear, said his assistant. Probably. The shuttle hatch opened. One human stepped out. She was shorter than Turin, wrapped in a dark travel coat with no ceremonial medal and no military insignia. Her black hair was tied behind her neck. A slim instrument case hung against one hip. She stopped at the edge of the landing marks and waited. Turin had studied enough human material to recognize the gesture. She was allowing him to control the first approach. That was polite. It was also useful evidence. A civilization that possessed true strategic mass rarely allowed another species to dictate the rhythm of first contact. Great powers announced themselves. They brought escorts, they negotiated exceptions before arrival. Humanity had done none of those things. Their messages had been precise, agreeable, almost painfully literal. They wanted access to Vardesh deep sky observations. They wanted to compare stellar survey data. They accepted the weapons exclusion around Kharad without argument. When the recognition office instructed them to send a shuttle to the mountain, they had simply answered. Accepted. No demand for a capital escort. No warning that an armed vessel required special accommodation. No negotiation over status. Turin had already entered the likely classification. Minor strategic civilization. Advanced enough for limited exchange. Not dangerous enough to reshape Vardesh policy. He walked forward. Jessa called her. The human inclined her head. Stellar Survey Specialist, Terran Deep Reference Office. Not ambassador. Not admirals. Not minister. That strengthened the reading. I am Turin Vol, Prefect of Recognition. I know. Her Vardesh pronunciation was imperfect but careful. Turin glanced at the tiny shuttle behind her. You came alone. My pilot is inside. I meant humanities. Jessa looked past him toward the upper terraces. For the landings. Oh, yes. Then yes. Turin almost smiled. The first misunderstanding was usually the most revealing. He gestured toward the stair. Come, your recognition review has already begun. Kharad's stair had been cut into the mountain before Turin's family possessed a written name. 71 terraces climbed from the landing shelf to the open recognition court. Each terrace represented an old Vardesh admission class. Traders stopped low. Regional powers climbed farther. Military equals reached the upper court beneath the crown hammer. No sign explained that. Outsiders received technical instructions, safety boundaries, atmospheric data, and approach rules. The meaning of the climb belonged to Vardesh tradition. Jessa moved beside Turin without complaint. She did stop twice. Not from exhaustion. She looked upward. Each time, her eyes tracked the same guide star triangle Turin had checked after the shuttle landed. You navigate by those, he asked. I notice reference errors. What errors? The sky keeps changing by a fraction. Turin looked up. Everything appeared normal. Atmosphere? Maybe. She kept walking. On the 43rd terrace, Turin's assistant handed him the recognition slate. One field remained open. Declared strategic vessel. Turin entered. None. Jessa watched him. What does that field mean? It records the highest military vessel your delegation presents during recognition. We didn't present one. Correct. So it stays blank. It becomes part of your classification. That stopped her. Not dramatically. She simply ceased climbing. Turin turned. What classification? Provisional courier grade. Jess's expression changed by less than he expected. Courier grade civilization. Strategic tier. Not civilization. Based on the shuttle. Based partly on what you chose to bring. You instructed us to bring a shuttle. Oh yes. And to keep armed spacecraft outside the Carred exclusion volume. Oh yes. We did both. Turin felt the first small discomfort of the day. The procedure assumes a power with significant military capacity will declare it. Where? In the procedure. I read the procedure. Jess's voice remained mild. All of it. Turin handed her the slate. She scrolled through the arrival instructions. Weapons exclusion. Mass limits. Landing dimensions. Communications bans. Environmental rules. Emergency departure authority. Nothing required a visiting civilization to announce military assets kept outside the controlled region. There did not need to be. Every recognized power understood the implication. Jessa returned the slate. You're using an answer to a question you never asked. Turin's neck scales tightened. You believe the ranking is incorrect. I don't know your ranking system well enough to say. Then what are you saying? That your evidence is incomplete. Above them, the guide stars shifted again. This time Turin saw it. The upper point slid sideways. Barely, then returned. His assistant looked at the sky. Prefect. Jessa followed the movement. That's not your atmosphere. Turin studied her. What is it? She lifted one shoulder. Something waiting for clearance. For the first time that morning, Turin did not know which assumption to trust. They continued climbing. At the upper court, the mountain opened beneath a roofless circle of black stone. Recognition officials stood around the rim. Beyond them, Carred's inhabited terraces dropped for kilometers through thin cloud. Far above, orbital defense platforms crossed the sky as moving sparks. The crown hammer occupied the northern edge. Its barrel emerged from the mountain itself. The accelerator had been built to test warships without declaring war on them. A standardized proof mass could be driven against a visiting hull at controlled velocity, survive the strike, and a ship earned recognition above cruiser grade. No vessel had ever treated the test casually. Turin took his position beneath the court seal. Jessa stood alone across from him. Humanity has been provisionally entered at courier grade, he said. Murmurs moved around the court. Jessa glanced at the officials. Then back to Turin. May I correct the records? You may submit evidence. Good. She touched her wrist communicator. Outer hold Calder, Recognition Authority has authorized supplementary evidence. Turin frowned. I authorized submission. I did not authorize an armed approach. Agreed, it will remain outside your exclusion volume. What will? Jessa looked toward the northern sky. The vessel that carried the shuttle here. Several officials laughed before catching themselves. Turin did not. He remembered the misplaced star. His assistant checked orbital telemetry. Then checked it again. Prefect. The word came out quietly. Turin turned toward the display. A contact had appeared beyond the Carred exclusion volume. At first, the system marked it as a navigation error. Then as several contacts flying in impossible proximity. Then it erased both conclusions. The contact's shape resolved. 3 enormous armored plates lay offset along a common spine, separated by dark gaps large enough to swallow ordinary cruisers. Deep structural members connected the plates inside the shadowed spaces. The hull was neither elegant nor brutal. It looked deliberate. A machine built by people who expected every part of it to carry weight. No running lights decorated the outer armor. No banners. No glowing weapon ports. Only a line of white identification marks across the central plate. HSS Parallax. Turin's assistant whispered, that cannot be the same vessel. Jessa heard him. It is. You came from that. Oh yes. In the shuttle. Oh yes. The absurd simplicity of the answer silenced the court. Telemetry continued arriving. Reactor capacity, field depth, hull mass, internal power routings. Weapons architecture remained mostly sealed behind armored doors, but even the support systems around those doors exceeded the peak output of ships Turin had spent his career classifying. The recognition office compared parallax against every battleship in its archive. The result flashed once. Then the system demanded confirmation. Turin authorized it. The result returned unchanged. No recorded battleship matched the human vessel's combined power capacity. None came close. Jessa watched him reading. That is a battleship. Turin hated how weak the question sounded. Yes, Jessa said. What class? Crownless. Why is it here? It escorted our survey mission. Why did you conceal it? Her eyebrows lifted. We didn't. You kept it outside our sensors. You ordered armed vessels to remain beyond the controlled volume. That does not mean beyond observation. It gave a boundary, we stayed outside it. Turin looked at the telemetry again. The human ship had occupied its present holding position since before the shuttle entered the mountain's approach corridor. It had not hidden. Kared's local sensors simply had not been pointed far enough outward to examine a region declared clear by the arrival plan. The mistake felt different now. Not yet catastrophic, but no longer comfortable. A civilization with nothing to hide had followed his rules so literally that his institution had mistaken compliance for absence. Turin forced his attention back to the only question that mattered. Size did not equal combat power. Every archive contained ceremonial dreadnoughts built to frighten neighbors and fail under real pressure. What is parallax designed to do? Jessa considered him. Stay functional while other people are trying very hard to change its condition. That is not an answer. It's the short answer. I require the useful ones. Then tested. Several officials turned toward Turin. His assistant whispered, Prefect, we have not prepared the hammer for a vessel of that mass. Jessa heard that too. We aren't asking for special treatment. Turin looked at her. That test can damage capital ships. I assumed that was why you built it. No swagger. No threat. She said it like a surveyor discussing an instrument. Turin felt his old confidence tighten rather than disappear. That mattered. He had seen visiting powers use spectacle to hide weakness. He had watched commanders submit ships covered in armor too expensive to replace. He had rejected fleets whose weapons exceeded their cooling systems. Evidence had to survive measurement. Then humanity may request formal warship recognition. Jessa nodded. I requested. Do you understand that the crown hammer will strike your vessel? Oh yes. And that the recognition office accepts no liability for structural damage. I'll transmit that. She paused. Please transmit the exact test profile too. Turin almost objected. Then stopped himself. Exact. The word had begun to bother him. He sent the profile. Parallax accepted. The court broke for preparation. Turin expected Jessa to return to her shuttle. Instead, she sat on the lowest edge of the upper terrace and removed a small packet from her coat. Inside were thin slices of dried fruit. She ate one while technicians argued over a battleship powerful enough to break every scale on their normal display. Turin stared. You are eating. Oh yes. Your ship is about to receive a crown hammer strike. I'm not on the ship. That makes you less concerned. It makes my worrying less useful. She offered him a slice. Turin declined. Jessa ate it herself. You are military, he asked. No, you serve aboard a battleship. I work aboard whatever gets the survey team where it needs to go. What exactly do you do? I compare stellar reference frames. Turin looked toward the guide stars. You are a navigator. Not exactly. A cartographer. Close enough. The upper stars shifted again. More clearly now. Jessa pointed with the remaining piece of fruit. There. Turin followed her finger. The triangle narrowed, then widened. What causes that? Parallax. How? Field loading changes the path of incoming light near the ship, not much at this distance. You noticed before it entered our local track. I knew where to look. There was no pride in that either. Turin had the strange impression that humanity had sent him the least theatrical person it could find to accompany the most theatrical object he had ever seen. He sat beside her, his ceremonial coat pulled awkwardly at the shoulders. My father taught me those stars. Jessa glanced at him. He was a surveyor, a weather pilot, good reference memory. He could detect a storm by watching the Eastern Star. That's basically field work. Turin looked at her. Do humans always reduce formal distinctions like this? No, sometimes we invent worse ones. That earned a short sound from him before he could prevent it. Then the mountain announced the hammer was ready. They stood. Parallax had moved into the test volume. It filled the high sky slowly. At that distance it should have looked small. It did not. The three offset hull plates caught sunlight at different angles. The spaces between them remained dark. Across the center, recessed structures turned without exposing any weapon barrels. Turin's assistant read the final safety confirmation. Proof mass loaded. Velocity. Standard capital setting. Target. Central human plate. Turin opened the formal channel. HSS Parallax, this is Carred recognition. The first proof strike will begin after confirmation. A human voice answered. Parallax confirms. What? Not Jesso. Another person, likely the ship's commander. Turin continued. You may maneuver within the test volume. Understood. Defensive systems are unrestricted. Understood. Turin waited. The human ship did not move. Parallax, do you require more preparation time? No. Then why are you maintaining position? A pause. We're prepared. Turin lowered his hand. The crown hammer fired. The mountain kicked beneath his feet. A white trace crossed the upper atmosphere too quickly for the eye to follow cleanly. The proof mass hit Parallax. Every Vardesh officer expected the human battleship to move. Not to break. Not necessarily. But momentum was not a matter of opinion. The standard strike had pushed dreadnoughts across thousands of kilometers of test space. That displacement was part of the measurement. Parallax moved. Turin almost felt relief. Then the tracking system finished calculating. The human battleship had shifted less than the width of a landing ramp. The court went silent. The proof mass had not shattered against the armor. It had not ricocheted. It had entered a dark field near the central plate and slowed so violently that the tracking system lost confidence in its own timestamps. Now the projectile hung against the ship's forward field, glowing along its edges. Inside Parallax, new power signatures rose. Not weapons. Deep rotating systems spread through all three hull plates. The captured momentum was being transferred. Stored. Distributed. Turin stared at the energy model. That cannot be stable. Jessa had stopped eating. Her attention was completely on the ship now. It doesn't have to stay stored. Where does it go? Watch. Parallax rotated by a fraction. Not away from Carred's. Upward. The entire battleship began climbing to a slightly higher orbit. Slowly, smoothly. The motion was almost unimpressive until Turin understood what he was seeing. The human ship was spending the hammer's momentum by moving itself where it wanted to go. Not dumping the energy into space. Not throwing the proof mass back. Not turning the test into an attack. It had accepted the force, spread it through its structure, and converted the consequence into controlled motion. The glowing projectile cooled. Parallax released it into the exact recovery track specified by Carred. Weapon doors remained closed. The court's recognition system updated. Capital survival exceeded. It tried to generate a strategic comparison. The field stayed blank. Turin's assistant touched the display. It has no categories. Then make ones. There is no upper band. Use the highest. It exceeds it. By how much? The assistant swallowed. Enough that the comparison stops being useful. Turin looked at Jessa. That round should have moved a fortress. It moved Parallax. Barely. Enough. Your ship could have returned it. Oh yes. Why didn't it? Jessa gave him a puzzled look. You asked us to survive the test. The answer struck harder than the hammer. Turin had spent his career measuring strength through what a civilization chose to display. Humanity had displayed only what the question required. Nothing more. The distinction unsettled him. He called for the second phase. Kared's upper recognition codes allowed multiple emplacements to fire against a vessel seeking exceptional status. It was not a larger secret weapon. It was the same test from different angles, forcing a ship to prove the first result was not fortunate alignment. Jessa requested the profiles. Again, Turin sent them. Again, Parallax accepted. The first emplacement fired. Then the second. Then the third. 3 bright traces converged. The human field deepened. For a heartbeat, the guide stars vanished inside a wavering patch of sky. Parallax took the impacts. Its outer plates shifted relative to one another. Deep internal systems climbed toward a limit that made Kared's engineers stop speaking. The ship drifted. Less than before. Then it began another slow orbital adjustment. 3 proof masses emerged into 3 safe recovery tracks. Still no human gun opened. The court erupted in overlapping voices. Some officials wanted the test halted. Others wanted full military observation. One demanded humanity disclose the internal design. Another insisted the result had to be false, because the alternative would invalidate decades of Vardesh classification. Turin heard all of them. He understood the fear beneath the arguments. Kared had built an institution around visible declarations of power. If humanity could carry this much capability while treating it as irrelevant to a survey meeting, then the institution's assumptions were not merely incomplete. They were dangerous. A message arrived from the High Directorate. Private Prefect eyes only. Turin opened it. The first line chilled him. Suspend recognition. The Directorate had seen the telemetry. They did not dispute it. That would have been easier. Instead, they attacked the procedure. Humanity had failed to declare parallax before beginning recognition. Therefore, the message argued, the battleship constituted concealed strategic capability. Therefore, the test results could be rejected. Therefore, humanity's original courier-grade classification could remain until a later review. Turin read the message twice. His assistant watched his face. What is it? Nothing for the court yet. He walked to the northern rails. Far above, Parallax held station. Its shape warped the guide stars around it. Jessa joined him. You received bad news. How do you know? You stopped arguing with me. Turin almost told her to leave. Instead, he asked, why did humanity not declare parallax? We did. When? When your office asked for a list of armed vessels entering the exclusion volume. Parallax never entered. Correct. That is not a declaration. It was the question you sent. Turin looked at her. She continued. You asked which armed ships would cross your boundary. We answered none. You knew a battleship was waiting outside it. Oh yes. You knew we might consider that strategically relevant. No, how could you not? Because you never said you would rank us by equipment we were specifically told to keep away. The irritation in her voice was the first strong emotion Turin had heard from her. Not fear. Not triumph. Annoyance. You came here to compare stars, Turin said. Oh yes. With the most powerful battleship in our records behind you. We came through unknown territory. That is normal escort doctrine. For this mission, what do humans send when they expect trouble? Jessa looked upward. Something else. Turin decided not to ask. He reopened the directorate orders. Suspend recognition. The old Turin would have obeyed. Not because he was weak. Because institutions survived by consistency. His father had taught him another lesson with the guide stars. A pilot could trust a reference only while it continued matching reality. The moment the sky disagreed, loyalty to the old reading became negligence. Turin reviewed the human arrival packet. Every instruction, every acknowledgement, every declared craft. The error was obvious once he stopped reading tradition into the spaces between the words. Humanity had broken no rules. Kared had expected them to understand a rule it had never written. Then Kared had punished them for failing to perform it. Turin closed the directorate message. His assistant stepped closer. They are asking for confirmation. I know. What will you send? Turin looked at the recognition seal on his wrist. It gave him unilateral authority to assign provisional status. It was the same authority he had used that morning. He removed it. The assistant stared. Prefect, open the public records. All channels. All Kared recognition channels. Jessa watched him carefully. Turin returned to the center of the court. Officials quieted one by one. Above them, the human battleship remained motionless. Turin placed his seal on the black stone. I am voiding humanity's provisional courier classification. The court erupted. He raised his voice. The classification was issued from evidence created by our own incomplete instruction. One official shouted, the directorate ordered suspension. I received the order. And I am not suspending a result I caused by asking the wrong question. Silence returned. Turin felt the cost settle around him. He had just made the dispute larger than humanity. Good. It was larger. The arrival procedure instructs visiting powers to keep armed vessels outside the Kared volume, he said. It does not require those vessels to be presented. Our office then treats absence from the controlled volume as evidence of absence from the visitor's strategic capacity. His assistant looked at the open procedure. Several other officials did the same. Turin continued. That inference has no written foundation. A directorate representative appeared on the court display. Prefect Val, you are ordered to relinquish the seal. Turin glanced down. It is already on the stones. You are exceeding your authority. No, I am ending the part of it that allowed this error. Jessa's face changed. For the first time, Turin saw respect there. The directorate representative turned toward her. Humanity concealed a battleship. Jessa answered before Turin could. We parked an armed vessel outside the volume where you prohibited armed vessels. You exploited our procedure. We obeyed it. You knew what parallax was. Oh yes. Then why send only a shuttle? Jessa looked at the human craft far below. Because you asked for a shuttle. No one laughed. The statement was too simple now. Turin realized simplicity was becoming dangerous to the old argument. The directorate representative tried another direction. The vessel's defensive test does not establish offensive equivalence. Jessa nodded. That's true. Turin turned toward her. She had just given the directorate an opening. The representative seized it. Then recognition cannot exceed defensive capital status. Jessa touched her communicator. Parallax called her. The ship answered. Go. Kared disputes offensive classification. Understood. The directorate representative said, you will not fire within Vardesh territory. We weren't planning to. Then you cannot prove the claims. Jessa looked at Turin. Do your records include external verified weapon trials? Oh yes. Human records. No. Would you accept raw independent observatory data? From whom? Jessa named 3 neutral scientific bodies beyond Vardesh space. Turin knew 2 of them. Neither had political reason to inflate human capability. Data arrived. Not battle footage. Not propaganda. Measurement logs. Energy signatures. Target composition. Range. Containment limits. Parallax had been tested in empty interstellar space before departure. Turin watched the numbers populate. The quartz comparison engine stopped again. This time it did not leave the field blank. It displayed a warning. Archive ceiling exceeded. The directorate representative went still. Turin felt no satisfaction. Only a colder understanding. The human battleship had not needed to fire above Kared because it had already been measured elsewhere. Humanity had brought the proofs. Kared simply had not asked for it. Jessa folded her arms. We are not firing a main battery over an inhabited world to make a paperwork problem feel dramatic. Turin almost smiled. The directorate representative did not. Then what does humanity want? Jessa looked genuinely surprised. The same thing we requested before landing. Strategic recognition. Survey access. The court went quiet again. Jessa pointed toward the sky. We came to compare deep reference observations. Parallax is here because the route was unknown and our survey team is expensive to replace. Turin stared at her. You unveiled the most powerful battleship ever entered in our records because we ranked you incorrectly. Oh yes. And you still want stellar data. Oh yes. That is all. That was the meeting. The absurdity finally broke something in the court. Not discipline. Perspective. Several officials lowered their eyes. Turin's thought of the morning. The little shuttle. The blank strategic field. His confident hand assigning courier grade. The human surveyor asking where the hidden rule was written. Kared had built an entire interpretation around what humanity had not done. Humanity had merely continued doing what it came to do. The directorate representative ended the channel without granting recognition. That created the next problem. Under Vardesh law, Turin could void his provisional ranking. He could not issue the highest strategic status alone. The directorate could delay for months, perhaps years. During that time, humanity would remain outside the Deep Sky Exchange. The old procedure could survive by exhaustion. Turin knew institutions that way. A wrong decision rarely defended itself by winning an argument. It defended itself by making correction expensive. He looked at his seal on the stone. Then at Gesso. If recognition is delayed, what happens? We leave. Parallax 2. Of course. You would withdraw the survey request. We can map somewhere else. That answer frightened Turin more than a threat would have. Vardesh culture had spent generations assuming access to Kared's archives was a prize outsiders would fight to obtain. Humanity was prepared to walk away. Not angrily. Simply because there were other stars. Turin looked toward the guide triangle. The upper point shifted as Parallax adjusted its field. His father's voice returned from decades earlier. When a reference moves, first ask whether the sky moved or you did. Turin turned to his assistant. Bring me the founding charters. The assistant hesitated. Which section? The authority section. It arrived on the slate. Turin read slowly. The recognition office could not grant permanent strategic equality, but it could certify observed capability. And any civilization whose verified capacity exceeded the archive ceiling automatically entered a temporary status created centuries earlier for unprecedented cases. The status had never been used. Not once. It had an embarrassingly plain name. Unbounded Review. Turin laughed softly. What? Jessa asked. We have a procedure. I was beginning to suspect you liked those. This one may save us. He opened the court channels. The directorate tried to interrupt. Turin continued anyway. Kared recognition certifies that HSS Parallax exceeds the current strategic archive ceiling in defensive impulse handling and independently verified weapons output. The words carried across every official terminal on the mountain. Humanity therefore enters unbounded review under the founding charter. The directorate representative reappeared. You cannot grant equalities. No. Turin looked directly into the display. But you cannot legally preserve courier grade either. The representative said nothing. Turan finished. Until review closes, humanity receives the highest access protections available to an unclassified major power. Jessa exhaled. Barely. It was the first sign all day that the outcome mattered to her personally. Turan noticed. So did his assistant. What happens to you? Jessa asked. Turan looked at the seal on the stone. I suspect I become educational. That sounds unpleasant. It usually is. The directorate could remove him. Perhaps it would. But the record was now open. The test could not be unseen. The procedure could not be unread. And Parallax was still hanging over Karad with every main weapon sealed. The cold fact of its capability made the next decision strangely easier. No Vardesh official could pretend humanity had negotiated because it lacked another option. Humanity had options. It simply preferred the original meeting. By evening, the directorate changed tactics. It stopped disputing the Parallax telemetry. Instead, it requested human participation in rewriting the recognition procedure. Jessa refused. Turan was startled. You wanted the rule corrected. I want your rule corrected by the people who own it. We could misunderstand humanity again. Then ask us questions. Turan considered that. It was irritatingly consistent. What would you change? One sentence. Which? Arrival logistics will not be treated as undeclared strategic classification. Turan waited. That is all. For the problem you had today. You would not add a human exemption. No. Why? Because then the next civilization gets trapped by the same assumption. Turan looked toward the landing shelf. The tiny shuttle sat where it had all day. Nothing about it had changed. Only the meaning Karad had attached to it. By nightfall, the directorate accepted an emergency amendment. A visiting delegation's transport could no longer determine military rank. Armed craft obeying exclusion orders could not be treated as non-existent. Any strategic inference not stated in the arrival instructions had no standing. Unprecedented capability required explicit review, not punishment for failing to perform an unwritten ritual. The amendment did not mention humanity. It did not need to. Turan signed as witness, not prefect. The directorate had accepted his surrender of unilateral ranking authority. The seal remained on the court stone. His office would survive. Its old privilege would not. That felt fair. Later, Jessa found him on the lower terrace. The wind had strengthened. Kared's lights burned far below like scattered embers in the mountain dark. Parallax was preparing to leave the test orbit. Your survey access was approved, Turan said. I saw. Full depreference exchange. I saw that too. You sound disappointed. I'm tired. Humans become tired. Frequently. I had begun to doubt it. Jessa leaned against the basalt rail. For a while neither spoke. Then Turan asked the question he had resisted all day. Why build a battleship like Parallax? Jessa looked upward. The ship was barely visible except where it bent the guide stars. Because sometimes the first job of a warship is to stay. Well, stay. Where the civilians are, where the convoy is, where the evacuation lane starts, where someone stronger wants you gone. Turan listened. Jessa continued. A weapon can be powerful because it destroys something. A ship can also be powerful because force stops deciding where it has to go. Turan felt the old institutional instinct searching for a slogan inside her answer. He let it go. What would Parallax have done if the hammer tests had been attacks? The same first thing. Taken the hits. Oh yes. And after that. Jessa looked at him. That depends on whether you fired again. A cold line ran through Turan's back. There it was. Not a threat. A boundary. The warm part of the day did not erase what Parallax was. The Vardesh had struck it repeatedly with a fortress weapon. The human ship had never opened a gun. That choice meant more now because Turan had seen the verified weapon records. He understood exactly what remained unused. Your people are difficult to classify, he said. Jessa smiled faintly. Try asking. Parallax requested departure clearance. Karad granted it. The battleship began climbing from the recognition orbit. As its momentum systems relaxed, the distortion around the upper sky weakened. Turin watched the three guide stars. The first settled. Then the second. The third slid slowly back into the narrow triangle his father had shown him when he was a child. For most of his life, Turin had trusted that shape because it was familiar. Tonight he trusted it because he had watched it change and return. Far above Karad Stair, HSS Parallax crossed beyond the mountain sky. Its three dark hull plates caught the first edge of sunrise. Every main gun door remained closed.